Hey, everybody, welcome into a special episode of the Flyover League. Jamie Plunkett here with Noah Darling, as always, and we are joined today by the head coach of the Kansas Jayhawks. Dan Fitzgerald joins the show. Coach, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thanks for having me, guys. Fired up.
Coach, I've been around this program quite a bit. I think that's pretty well documented. It feels like this group in particular has turned a corner since that Texas Tech series, won 10 games in a row at this point. What was your perspective on what changed, maybe not on the field, but maybe off the field, for this group to hit their stride?
Well, I think sometimes, things take longer than maybe you'd like for them to kind of come together. And I think that was probably the case a little bit with us of we had just weren't playing super clean baseball. We'd play it in chunks, and then we'd, fall into some ugly baseball, and we just hadn't gelled. And so Friday, we went to TCU for a non-con just on a Tuesday. Did not play well. Friday played really bad against Tech, and then that night got back to the hotel and met as a staff and just said, "Hey, this is everyone's trying, everyone's locked in, great culture, great makeup, great all that stuff, but we're just off. Like we're just playing broken baseball," and kind of rebranded some things and it's kind of like with your kids, you tell them something and it doesn't click, and then you say the exact same thing a different way, or, Kelly says something and they listen or whatever. And kind of one of those messages of, hey, this is what we're trying to do. Let's get back to the basics. And maybe we were focusing on too much and simplified it, but we came out on Saturday and got walked off, 9-8 loss. I think it was 9-8. Got walked off, heartbreaker, but we played great. We had 17 hits, and I remember going to bed that night thinking tomorrow's going to tell us a lot about who we are, because we actually stuck to the process and played good baseball, but got beat. And I've joked, you get a couple reset conversations with your team every year, but you don't get 10 of them. So we had one and got beat and came out that Sunday and played awesome. 10-run Tech, and then, have played really clean baseball since. So I think it was probably just a little bit of everything, probably a simplification, and probably a little bit of belief. And I think sometimes you need to see a W go up in the win column to really feel it. But yeah, it was probably more of just a overall simplification, and did it on both sides of the ball, and have been better since.
You talk about simplification, and when we spoke after the TCU game 4 or 5 weeks ago now, we talked about the roster turnover you've seen the last few years. 25 new faces last year, 27 this season. When it comes to roster construction and all of the culture building that goes along with that, what's your approach from a roster construction standpoint to get the right guys in the building, also have maybe a little bit of positional versatility, and just ensure that all of your bases are covered from a roster standpoint?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the trick of college athletics right now, really, and something that we spend infinity time on. And I think there's the baseball skill talent piece of it, which is certainly important. And I learned at an early age as a coach that the better the players were, the better we were as coaches. The easier it was to make great decisions with great players. But there's the baseball evaluation. But to me, that the longer I do this, that stays the same. But the thing that becomes more important is just the makeup, the character. One of the greatest things that happened in my career was during COVID. Heath got us together on a Zoom about a week into it and said, "Hey guys, we're not going to sit around and recruit this entire time. Like, we're going to do that, but we're going to treat this as a sabbatical, and we're going to study something." So I spent forever looking at roster construction and how we had put teams together at DBU, and what were the things we were doing that were finding some of these outlier players, and where were we finding them? How were we finding them? What were the commonalities? And it was one of the best things ever, because it really helped me look at, okay, what are the important factors to putting together a team? And, this is, you do hours and hours and weeks and months of research, and you come back with makeup really matters, which, we all knew, but it was fun to kind of quantify it. And so I think that's number one for us is, are they a good fit? Are they going to be great Jayhawks? Are they going to care about the team more than themselves? And are they going to live that out? And are they going to be committed to a day-to-day, pitch-to-pitch mentality that collectively then we get a group that just moves forward in the same direction? So I think it's hard, because it'd be awesome to coach guys for 4 years, and we have great high school players that come here, but just the nature of the beast right now, and rev share and NIL and all that stuff, kind of forced us into a well-documented cycle of some JUCO guys and some great portal guys. But to me, it always comes down to, we need the bases covered in terms of positionally. We need guys that can defend in the middle of the field. The hit tool has to be, the approach tool has to be real. But to me, the big one is the character and makeup. They have to be great teammates, because we don't do. And this is true of everywhere in the world, but in particular inside of our culture, being a great teammate is number one.
A lot of talk about culture, teammate. It feels like this team this season has taken on a lot of persona of last season's team, especially at this particular interval here on April 14th. What's the challenge of actually finding that? Because that doesn't show up in a box score. That doesn't show up in highlights. How do you find that, while maybe not even being where that player is at the lower level?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I don't think we, I'm not great at the get in a room and here's the team building exercise we're going to do. Everyone, tell us your greatest moment of life and your darkest secret, and we're going to bond. Like I believe that so much of team building happens when you get like-minded people together, and then the coaches leave the room. And I think you have to trust your leaders, and you have to trust the guys that have been in it. So I think when I looked at this year's team and who we were going to become, I had a real sense of comfort knowing that Brady Ballinger, Dom Bagley, Dario Lasoria, Cannon Carr, Manning West, Max Solis, that those guys were going to be in that room. Blake O'Brien, who got hurt this fall, didn't play redshirted last year and got hurt this fall. Well, a guy like Blake, just because he didn't play last year and now he's hurt, doesn't mean that he can't impact the way we are. And he knows exactly how we do things, and he's a massive piece of our culture. And so I think I felt good knowing that inside of our walls, the veteran guys know that it's part of their responsibility to educate and say, hey guys, this is kind of the way we do things. Not, hey, this is how we do it because this is how we've always done it. Not that mentality, but very much a, hey, jog to your next spot. Like there's a be on time. Your locker doesn't have to be surgery ready in terms of its cleanliness, but like your stuff, get it off the ground. Like those little things that then accumulate into bigger things. So I think that's part of it. And then I think the like-minded thing is probably the biggest part of it is, when the messaging is clear in recruiting of this is who we are, this is what we're about. And you get guys that understand that those are the guardrails coming in. I think in when the guardrails are wide, like I think 15, 20 years ago, whenever I was at DMAC, it was probably the guardrails were probably a little more narrow of, haircuts and piercings. And, I did tell some guys a year ago, they're talking about some like neck tattoos. I'm like, hey, run that by your parents before, you get your family crest. But I think the older I get, the more simple I get in terms of the guys have incredible autonomy in this program to be themselves and to do the things that they care about as a team. And I'd look at more of the 30,000 foot. Are they inside the big guardrails?
So no rock chalk neck tattoos is what I'm hearing.
Not yet. Okay. Not yet. But those are important ones. Now I've got kids that are, I've got a 15-year-old, a 14-year-old, and a 12-year-old. And so, my perspective's changed a little bit of they're closer in age to the players than they ever have been. So I think through the lens of a dad of like, well, I'd want my kid to run that one by me.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Speaking of your kids, and you've already kind of mentioned the number of JUCO kids that you've brought in over the years at KU, but is there an inherent quality from a JUCO kid, or what are you looking for at the JUCO ranks when you are evaluating kids to come up to the D1 level? Because from my perspective, JUCO's always been flush with talent. There's always been an incredible amount of talent at that level. But maybe kids got overlooked during the recruiting process. Maybe there were some other issues that kept them from going D1. And then they end up at Kansas, it seems. And half the players you just mentioned came from the JUCO ranks. What is it about JUCO recruiting that has allowed you to kind of maybe unlock something from that level?
I think, that there's some risk and reward with every avenue that you look into. There's at LSU, when I was committing young guys, ninth graders, there's super high risk, high reward. Connor Griffin and guys like that, you're recruiting them and you're like, I think he's going to be like the first pick of the draft, but if not, like, he can be pretty good here. And but there's risk and reward there, and some of the young guys, there's projection, and you think about, okay, a guy who's really mature in ninth grade, is he the best player because he's shaving, or because he's truly a unicorn and going to continue to develop? So I think every round of international recruiting, high school recruiting, junior college recruiting, portal recruiting, there's risk reward involved. I think the JUCO one for us was safe right away and smart because of where we were at. We just needed to put a team together. So we had so few players when we got here, and once we went into that cycle of transfer and JUCO guys, we kind of put ourselves in that pocket of, okay, we're going to be doing this for a while. Now we've supplemented it along the way with some really good high school players and continue to do that. But I think the JUCO thing for me is so intriguing and been so good for us because there's not a whole lot of flash and flare here at Kansas. Like, we are, I'm not drawn to that. I'm kind of drawn more to just the lunch pail, blue collar, show up and work. I'm not, I will never have a second job as an interior designer. Kelly is fully responsible for all aspects of that. I still have to ask Kelly if things match when I get dressed in the morning, like, hey, does this? So I'm just not, that's not who I am. And it's not really who my staff is. No offense to those guys if they take offense to that. But to us, it's been more about, there are facility things we need to do and will continue to do as we grow the program. But for us, it's our facility or lack of flash and flare in our facility has never been anything other than a positive for us. Like, it's an awesome place. It's an incredible location. It's right next to Allen Fieldhouse. It's in the heart of campus. The fact that, we're outdated in some things for us has always been, well, that's just part of who we are. And if the guys that are drawn to kind of the nitty gritty and the lunch pail mentality are the guys that really fit us. And there are a lot of JUCO guys that fall into that category because they're playing at places that there's no pomp and circumstance. I laugh about, changing game times in Division I baseball. There's such a process to it. When there's rain coming in JUCO, you'd like call the other coach and be like, hey, I see a cloud. Let's move back 20 minutes. There's just total flexibility, and you'd be halfway through a practice and wouldn't like how it was going, so you just start the practice over. Now we can't do stuff like that now because we have actual hour restrictions. But to me, the JUCO guys that, I think of Tyson Owens and Matisse Naral playing for Todd Engelhardt at Cochise Junior College. Your driver pitching wedge from Mexico. You are in the middle of the desert. You are driving, 4 hours to play, 3 hour, 2, whatever it is to play conference games in the middle of the week, coming back at night. There's a certain toughness that comes with that. And then you play for a guy like Todd, who's a Hall of Fame coach, but that guy can really coach and he's tough. Tyson LeBlanc at LSU Unis played for elite coaches and Alan Orgain and Jeff Willis, Nick Studdard, and like those guys are elite coaches. And so I think we're getting a really tough player who's played for a great coach, who's got a toughness and cares about the things that we care about. So I think it's a combination of everything, and it'll evolve. Like we have this conversation in a couple of years, I'm sure we'll have a different take on who we're recruiting and why, but that's kind of been the genesis of it for now.
You mentioned your staff just a minute ago. It feels like you talk about them quite a bit, but they're nationally underrated. Specifically with Tyler Hancock, what's the secret sauce that he has to get the most out of maybe JUCO talent? Maybe it is high school bats. I don't know how many of those you have actually had, but it feels like guys just simply get better under his tutelage.
Yeah, they're the best. My staff is incredible. Yeah, they're as good as it gets. Tyler is amazing. I think, one of the cool parts that Tyler and I, and he'd say the same thing if he was on here, Tyler and I were both assistants at DBU together. And so we ran, Tyler ran the recruiting board. I was the recruiting coordinator, but he ran the board and then learned the system that we used in terms of scholarships and blah, blah, blah. So when I hired Tyler, it was so great because we speak the same language offensively. We're both Dan Heefner hitting disciples. And so our language is so tied together, and we come from the same school. Now we're very different. Tyler is the nicest person. Like my wife, my mom, my father-in-law, and Tyler Hancock. Like those are the four nicest people I know. They're just genuinely incredible people. And Tyler is an amazing worker. He's unbelievably loyal. He's a great dad. He's a great husband. He's, I always joke when we have questions on staff about the right thing to do, like I'll ask the whole staff, and then I always ask Tyler last because I'm like, well, whatever Tyler says is for sure going to be the right thing to do. So he's amazing with the players. They trust him. They trust him with their swing, but more importantly, they trust him just as a human being. And he's a relentless worker. Tyler does not do anything that he can't prove factually, statistically, analytically. So I think there's a street cred to he's got ideas and original thoughts and hey, let's try this. But he's always going to come back to, okay, is there science behind it? And ultimately, about once a day, something will happen, and Tyler and I look at each other and say, remember when Heath did this? So we're both so blessed to have worked for Dan and to work together under Dan. But yeah, he's the best of the best. And I'd like for you to keep these guys underrated, Noah. We're going to keep these guys in Lawrence for a really long time. I don't need everyone knowing how great these guys are. That was a joke, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. We're not going to throw their resume up on the screen now or anything like that for you, but yeah, obviously you've got a great staff assembled with the success that you guys have built, with the way that you've constructed this roster. Tyler's been a huge part of that. And when you think about his work with the roster this year, and then you look at some of the performances we've seen from, Jordan early in the season, Tyson a couple weeks ago for a really good stretch there, and now Max over the last 4 or 5 games has been hitting the cover off of the ball. When you see different guys in the lineup kind of stepping into the key roles in key moments, what does that tell you about the not only the job Tyler is doing, but the ability of your lineup on any given day to get production from a different spot?
Yeah. Well, I think it's just the holistic piece of our program of, our recruiting is specific and tailored towards a certain type of player and a certain type of makeup. And John does an incredible job of communicating with our whole staff on, hey, what do you guys think of this guy, and what boxes does he check? And they communicate really well. Tyler and John share an office. I always joke, we'll find out stuff going on in John's life like 8 months after it happens. Tyler knows day one, but he's so loyal. So I always know that whenever I find something out about John, it actually happened 8 months ago. But Tyler always knows. They share an office. They're they're super tight. So their communication on the hitting side is amazing. Same thing on the pitching side with John and B. Scott and Ryan. But I think when you approach offense or you approach pitching, you just approach baseball in a let's just get better today. It gives you the leash to experiment and really get after it in something you're doing that day, knowing that, hey, if I just do this today, I set myself up well for tomorrow. And if I do it well tomorrow, I set myself up well for the next day. So, and then you fall into this cycle of like yesterday's practice, the guys had a chance to just get better yesterday. And then when they go out for early hitting today, we're not to the game yet. So they can still experiment. They can still try. And the analogy that we use, and this is, everything is stealing from, the guys I've worked for, in most notably, most of the things I say are straight from Dan Heefner and Jay Johnson's, database of stuff. But this is a specific Dan Heefner thing that Tyler and I talk about. Hitting's like driving across the country. Like you can get on one highway and drive across the country. You still have to steer. Unless you have a Tesla, and then you can just punch it in and you're good. But if you steer, you're still making corrections. You still have to get off and get gas every once in a while. You still have to use your blinker, and that's what hitting is. And I think Tyler does a great job of helping those guys steer the car. Our strength department, Luke Bradford, does an incredible job of building a bigger motor. And then it becomes the player's responsibility to keep the hands on the steering wheel and just keep it going and have input on where that's happening. So I never worry about who the hero is going to be, because I know they've all put the work in, and they've all, and you guys know how it goes. Sometimes those, Max Solis gets the walk-off. Well, there are a couple of bats earlier in that game that got the pitcher out of the game. You got a 12 pitch at bat here. You get a grind out, hit a ground ball, but, force an error by running down the line. And maybe that gets the pitcher out an inning early. So it's a collective effort, and it's always fun for me thinking who's going to be the guy that punches it through tonight.
I think specifically in the career of Max Solis, you mentioned his obviously great week that he's had, but that's a guy who was in the portal, a Hawaii commit for all of 5 minutes. But then you had great confidence in other guys learning from him this offseason. What have you seen from him as far as him specifically turning the corner the last really week or two, as far as on the field? And then how has he been off the field when he's not been playing as well?
Yeah, Max is awesome. Came in last year and won the starting catcher job by quite a margin in the fall. Scuffled a little bit early on, and Ian Francis just absolutely grinded his way into an awesome role for us, which put Max in kind of a backup type role, and Max just kept working and got to the end of the year. And I understood why Max went in the portal. It made sense. He'd had a disappointing year, and there was nothing pointing to Max coming back and winning a job at that point after his performance and just the way the year had unfolded. And last year our margin was so thin. Like we won the games we needed to win, but you take a couple. We were a 2 seed, but you take a couple of those series that we win. You take a couple of them out. We're scuffling to get in. So there was no margin for error last year, and Ian just ended up riding it. So Max goes in the portal and is having just a fantastic summer. And I stayed in touch with him. Like Max we texted all the time. I watched every single night before I went to bed. I watched all of his at bats, because I'm like, he is really making the adjustments that we talked about all year that he didn't really get to make here because he didn't get the at bats. And I just kept watching, going, gosh, he's really going off. And I called him and said, hey man, I texted him and said, hey, can you talk tonight after the game? And he said, sure. So he called me and we talked, and I said, Max, what do you want to do? We'd love to have you back. I'm so impressed with what you've done. And we had a great conversation, very candid conversation. Max was awesome. And Max and I have a fantastic relationship. And even through last year when when things weren't going awesome for him. We still had a great relationship. And he left on such great terms. There was no, I mean, it was a total pro. So we had a great conversation, and then, he commits to Hawaii like the next day. And I was like, maybe I thought the conversation was better than he did. And then literally within 24 hours, he just called and said, hey, not being in Lawrence that just doesn't feel right. And, is there still the opportunity? And I was like, heck yeah, man. So he came in and never blinked, never missed a beat, grinded it out, got off to a little bit of a slow start, but just kept working. And I think has been around it enough to know you never know when you're going to get your opportunities again, and certainly earned it. And yeah, it's been really fun. He's a great worker. He's an awesome kid. He's a great teammate, and he's a total gentleman. And actually grabbed breakfast with him when he got back, and again had a really candid conversation with him about his experience in the summer. And I've had a couple of those with him throughout the year. So very mature young man, and fun to see him having success.
We've talked a lot about the offense to this point. When we spoke after the TCU game, Fitz, there was a desire from you to see maybe your starters get off to better starts, give you a little bit more length. We've seen that in the past several weekends from Dom, from Matisse. Bodie Ray's been excellent for you in a variety of different roles. Can you just give us some insight from your perspective on how much the pitching has taken a step during this little stretch of success here?
Yeah, it's been critical. We were scuffling for a while there, and we're not getting quality starts, and it's just hard to play when you can't shrink the game on the front end of it. So a lot of challenge, a lot of conversations, a lot of sleepless nights for, I'm sure, some of the pitchers, for sure, for a lot of sleepless nights for our staff. But we've just continued to work. I got the greatest text in the world from Andy Lopez in the middle of that stretch. And Andy told me, he said, every year in 40 years of coaching, every year there was a time when baseball was really, really hard for us to play. And he just said, just keep teaching and just keep coaching. And, it's really helpful. That as a coach who's done it for a while, that's the answer, that you just put one foot in front of the other. But I shared that with our staff, and I don't know if that hit home, but I think Brandon, Ryan just continued to come up with a plan and continued to teach and continued to show guys like, hey, this is how we need to go about it. And to the pitcher's credit, they just continued to work. And then I think the other part of it is we started getting some roles right and started to match some things up, because we really thought our ability to match up out of the pen was going to be a strength. And for a while, it wasn't. It was not working great. So I think it's been a combination of everyone just pulling the rope together and getting on the same page. But yeah, they've been awesome.
When you have roles that are shifting a little bit, what are those conversations like with guys to say, hey, you've been like with Dom, hey, you've been our Friday guy for 2 years, but we're going to ask you to step up on Sundays? Or with Bodie coming out of the bullpen and then getting some spot starts in the midweek, just what are those conversations like?
Yeah, they're usually pretty. I've told the guys 1,000 times, like that it's actually our first year, and I've repeated ever since. My boys were wrestling in center field after a practice, like they were little. It was our first fall here, and I was trying to connect with the team, and I just said, guys, this is going to sound terrible, but let me finish this paragraph before you judge me. I don't really care if you like me. I don't lose 1 minute of sleep over whether or not you like me, but I lose a ton of sleep on whether or not you trust me. And I've told each team that respect is given in this program. It's a mandatory foundational piece. We will respect each other. We'll respect the process. We'll respect people in general. But trust is earned. And I take that very seriously. From the second we start recruiting a young man, until they put me in the ground, I really worry about earning their trust. And that starts with just being really honest and having tough conversations and and being able to tell the truth. I think sometimes as a coach, it's so much easier to tell a guy, hey, you're doing great, keep it up. And in reality, I think those players want to know, hey, well, yeah, thank you, I'm doing great, but I'm not playing, or I'm not hitting, or I'm not pitching the way I should. So what do I need to do? So I think, one, we're not afraid to have those conversations because they lead towards that trust being built and kept. So I think it's simple on just in a couple of those starts where maybe Dom wasn't pitching the way he was. It was like, hey man, this is going to give us more time. You get an extra day to rest here where we can figure things out. With Bodie, it was, hey, let's try this. We're not using you as much as we'd like. Let's see if starting you on Fridays gives us the boost, because energy-wise, Bodie's kind of a train. He's just a machine of energy. So we thought maybe that was the route. But then you get into a series and you watch Matisse and Dom throw, and you're like, gosh, man, these guys, I think we found what they need to do. And then you think, well, Bodie, we kind of missed having him in the back. Like Manning did an incredible job of picking up in some of those spots where Bodie would have gotten the ball. But all those great teams that we've all been a part of, like I think of one of the funnest teams I've ever coached in my life were the 2015 DBU Patriots. We had Brandon Coach, Chance Adams, and Drew Smith at the back end. Drew's still in the big leagues. Chance pitched in the big leagues. Brandon, unfortunately, ran into a bunch of injuries, but Brandon was the best of the three of them. But we had three big league relievers. And literally, like I still joke with Heath to this day, like we'd have a 1-run lead in the sixth, and I'd be like, man, I don't know if I'm going to get water or Gatorade after this inning because this thing's over. And they were so tough. And so I've always valued the bullpen at such a high level, where, one of your top three arms needs to be in back and two of your top five need to be in back for sure. So I think we just needed that. Yeah, we needed that algorithm to work out, but the conversations are pretty direct and pretty simple and pretty non-dramatic and all about, hey, here's the plan. And you know how it goes, guys, weather and all those things turn you into we'll play BYU in a few weeks. Then then Dom's starting again on Fridays and Matisse is now your Thursday starter. And, you never know how it works out. So, but the guys, when you care about the name on the front more than the one on the back, those conversations are pretty simple.
You just said, you told your guys you don't care if or whatever it is. I'm not here to impress you, whatever that may be. It seems like the teams you played last week weren't impressed with you either. What's your perspective on how they've handled playing the Jayhawks, whether that's being on the field, listening to your guys in the dugout, and then also when you're at home, listening to that student section literally on top of the opposing team's dugout?
It's so funny. When I think of last week, I think of Will Bolt and I have been friends for 20 years. Rich Wallace and I have been friends for 20 years. There aren't two guys in baseball that I respect. I love those guys. And I've often found that the player that drives you the most insane on the other team is the guy you'd really like to coach. And the teams where you've got a little bit of that back and forth I think of how many times at DBU we played Missouri State and, had really, really intense rivalry, or every weekend in the SEC when I was at LSU, or every weekend when I was at DMAC. Like, I just think that the intensity of close games, it just brings out, you can't gather a bunch of 18 to, I used to say 18 to 22, but now it's like you can't gather a bunch of 20 to 24-year-olds and stick them on a field for 18 straight innings like we did last Saturday and not have some emotion and some firepower and some stuff directed at each other's dugouts. Now, some of it is super. The amount of negativity that goes back and forth is very little. Like, our guys erupted on a foul ball that came into our dugout from the hitter. Like, they yelled at the hitter like he was trying to do it on purpose. So it was very funny. The hitter laughed. UCF chirped a couple things back at our dugout that our guys had said. It was really funny. It made our guys laugh. So I think college baseball still has a lot of that. And I've often said it's a 3-hour and 15-minute game with about 15 minutes of baseball actually happening, and then all this time in between every pitch. So it's actually pretty tame, and that the amount of legit intensity back and forth is of any kind of consequence is very small amount. But I think it's great, man. I think that's exactly why we play Nebraska in the midweek, because we know we're going to get their best bullet, and they're going to continue to prepare us for the Big 12. And playing UCF last weekend and having 3 tight games is the greatest thing in the world to prepare us for tonight against Wichita State. And I'm sure it'll be intense tonight, which is the greatest thing in the world to prepare us for this weekend at Oklahoma State. So, yeah, I think our guys are having a ton of fun. They laugh. They're laughing 99% of the time in the dugout, and 99.9% of what we say is about us. And then every once in a while, when one of our pitchers looks into a dugout, of course the other team's going to say something. One of their pitchers looks in our dugout, of course our guys are going to say something. And then it's our job as coaches to rein it in when it crosses the line, which that's the beauty of being in the Big 12 is every single one of these coaches is such a pro. And I think there's mutual respect amongst all of us.
That's a great segue into the next question here, which is when you look around the Big 12 now and you see the depth of the league from a coaching perspective, from a player perspective, you look at the standings at this point, midway through the conference slate, and it is not what the poll in the preseason would have suggested that it was. When you think about just how strong the Big 12 is right now, what's your assessment of the league?
Well, it's a monster. Yeah, it's an absolute monster, and every weekend is you better be buckled up because the coaching is fantastic. The preparation is incredible. There's never been a time in college baseball history where you have more information on another team, which means there's never been a time in college baseball where the other team has more information on you. I think the floor, I always think about where's the floor of each league. And I think the floor of the Big 12 is so high. Like, I don't think there's a single team in our league that is anywhere near a bottom. I think there are teams that are in more of a rebuilding, playing young players. You think of Arizona has, I watched Arizona and Arizona State last night. Arizona is playing 1,000 freshmen. Like, those guys are going to be so dangerous at the end of the year and so good for years to come. And you go through every single weekend that we've had. Like, I thought Tech was unbelievably offensive. Playing there is so hard. I thought Houston was really good. We had to come back in every game in that Houston series. Cincinnati gave it to us pretty good on Friday night and played 2 really good games after that to take that series. Utah is as good offensively as anyone that we've played. Utah's offense is as good as any offense that we've played against in our 3.5 years here. And then last weekend, obviously we had our hands full. And so I think the style of play of each team is different. Like, UCF is different than Utah in terms of how they generate offense, but they're both very dangerous. In every team in our league will take whatever you're willing to give them. And so you have to be so careful about not giving stuff away. And then, this weekend we go to obviously against a great team at a tough place to play at Oklahoma State. And then, next weekend we're at K-State. So it never ends. The league's a monster. And, I'm not in tune enough to really know what people are saying about our league because I've got enough going on with just trying to get my team ready to play. But our league is as good as top to bottom, as good as anything out there. Obviously, the SEC is going to, and rightfully so, the SEC continues to win national championships and continues to be, quote unquote, the top league. But if you look at the Big 12 success against the SEC this year, it's been fantastic and very, very deep league.
You found ways to compete in this very, very deep league the last 2 seasons. How have you seen your administration at Kansas continue to support this program and allow this to continue to happen?
Yeah, well, Travis Goff is, a massive reason why I came here. my relationship with him and my trust in him as a human being, and just knowing that he would have the best interests of I knew he'd have the best interests of our program, but more importantly, I knew who he was as a person, and that he'd have the best interest of me, of my family, and that he cares about all the right things. And then Sean Lester, our sport administrator, same exact thing. So in terms of the direct day-to-day interaction that I have with my administration, it's as good as it could possibly be anywhere in the world. They are A-plus human beings, and they certainly understand the landscape, and they know exactly what we need to continue to do to build. And so we continue to evolve. And I think, if you look at what Travis has done in his time here at Kansas, it's incredible with, hiring Lance and building football and building a beautiful new stadium that we're finishing one of the sides right now and should be completed soon. Obviously, basketball here is just, the coolest thing in the world to just kind of be a part of. And I've been so blessed to be able to watch Bill coach and have access to, peek in and watch practice. But what Travis has done just across the board in all the sports, our softball team's rolling right now. Golf is awesome. His soccer hire, Nate Lee, is an absolute stud. So I think collectively you just look at Travis's work and then all the administration, so supportive and so on the same page in our alignment. So we know we need to have work to do in all areas, but that stuff continues to get addressed. And I feel great about the direction of where we're headed. I wish I had a list of things of, hey, this is when we're starting construction on A, B, C, and D. But every coach in the world has that. Every coach in the world is thinking about what they're going to build next. And we certainly have our list, and we're working hard at it. And I think we'll see some new things here pretty quick.
You bring up something really interesting, and it's something that I've talked to the folks at TCU quite a bit about, is this sense of, in the current state of college athletics, with everybody trying to cut out their own slice of the pie, what is the alignment like from an athletics department standpoint at KU when it comes to all the coaches know that you guys have to have what you need to have success, but also you want to have success as a whole. You want to see Coach Self continue to have success. You want to see the football program and all the other athletics groups have success. What is your sense of the alignment at KU, and just what's your relationship like with the rest of the coaches?
Oh, it's awesome. I think, the coaching fraternity it's big, but the head coaching fraternity it's pretty small. There aren't that many of us on this campus, and we all want the same thing. We all want each other to have success. We all need each other. I can't tell you how many times there's something recruiting wise, or something in an operation or a camp or something where you need each other. And I think Travis and our entire administration has done a really good job of valuing the right things and communicating the things that are important to our administration, to our chancellor, who, by the way, Chancellor Girard is on he's involved in everything. He's on the board of directors of everything. So we get this incredible leadership from the top, and he's accessible. Like I'll get a text from him I got a text from him last Christmas. I was like, man, how many coaches are getting a text from their chancellor? It was really cool, but it's a very normal thing here. So I think Travis, he's never said this, but I would say it this way. I think Travis does an incredible job of valuing the people, the relationships, the support, and we're not really about things. Like I put it that way. I don't know if that's an eloquent way to say it, but this isn't an administration that is into things. I think it's into value of people and uh, the student athlete, and really having their experience be real. Everyone talks about the student athlete experience, and it usually comes up with like, hey, this guy is getting a waiver because he had a bad student athlete experience his freshman year, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, here it's very real. Like the student athlete experience are the student athletes being educated in all aspects of life. And Travis just does a fantastic job of celebrating all of it. You know, our staff meetings, they're not shortchanged on us celebrating everything. A series win, an all conference, an all conference recognition. And so there's a ton of support. And honestly, I think a big chunk of that has to do with who Bill is. Like, Bill is the coolest dude. Whatever you think about Bill Self in terms of how cool he is, he's 100 times cooler. And he's so humble, and Lance is the exact same way. Like, those are when you have your football and basketball coach, and you're getting text messages from them after a midweek win at Nebraska. It's a pretty cool thing. And those guys sit at the same table as us as meetings, and they're just normal guys too. So I think that's a big chunk of it.
Bill Self contributed a lot to me crying as a child, so I don't think it's that cool. But
hey man, you have watched. I do think it's awesome when you're on campus and come to a game, because I know that KU basketball has ripped your heart out 1,000 times, and I appreciate you even showing up on campus.
I have seen Iowa State win a game at Allen Fieldhouse. I have that to live with forever.
No, I don't think that happened, but we'll
did
go.
Before your time, so you weren't around. You wouldn't even know about it. But to close things out here on the 46.5-minute mark, I've asked you about this before, but maybe your opinion has changed. It seems like it's nationally aligned amongst coaches that you guys are kind of want to explore a new NCAA tournament format. I'll tell you that I've internally always been like, I don't want to do that because it's my NCAA tournament. That's just how I've always thought about it. But from an actually being there, actually coaching in it, I'll never know that feeling. So I'm curious about your thoughts on the future of the NCAA tournament and what you would like it to look like if you could snap your finger.
I would go to the Mike Rooney 32 hosts. You play a series weekend one, and you play a series weekend two. I think it makes incredible sense where you just everything in our sport is geared towards the series, and you go into every weekend knowing that you're trying to win a series. I think in the back of your mind, obviously you want to sweep, but you know categorically that winning a series is the whole point of it. So I think baseball is a game that's just how it's designed. I think if we were all recruiting to just win one game, it would look very different. But when you're trying to, over the long haul of winning 56 games, it's hard to have a 1-4, 2-3 winners play, losers bracket come through. I think you're going to get a way more pure representation of the best teams if you play it as a series. So, one plays a series against team number 64, and two plays against 63, and so on. And then those winners meet in a super, and then those guys go to Omaha. I think it'd be great for college baseball in terms of, like last year, great example. We would have hosted. We certainly weren't. We didn't do enough to be a host, but we would have been one of the top 32. And a place like Lawrence, you think of all the places that would have hosted last year, how into baseball they are. One of the great. I mean, I've played in a bunch of regionals, and you think about like. The regional at Southern Miss. It's incredible. The regional at Texas Tech, been in a couple of those. TCU, like everyone knows those are great. But then you think about some of these. Our regional that we hosted at DBU in 2015, it was incredible. So I think it would really help college baseball, and I think it would be it's a no-brainer. I can't possibly be more behind it.
It's fair. I've just always thought that that's the way it is. That's the way I like it. But I like the concept of you play weekends all year. Why not continue to play weekends? Because that does seem to screw teams as the pitching aspect of things. And it's always interesting to see how teams manage that. You think, LSU when they had Paul Skeens, and you thought, are they going to throw him off? And I don't believe they did, but just I like the line of thinking, but I'll have to come up with
they pitched him against Tulane. Tulane was dangerous, came in super hot, and in-state 4 seed dangerous. But in a series, if LSU is hosting Tulane, that's not even a question, because now you're lining up a series of it's just straight up baseball. And the other thing I'd like is a March 1st start date. So we'll throw that one in too. Well, that'll be our next episode. We'll talk about the start date for college baseball and snow, ice, and we'll cover global warming.
I don't have a lot of sympathy for the guy that takes his team to Minnesota in early March or late February, whenever that was. So
we're inside.
Either way,
it's a football stadium.
I don't know. As the guy in Texas who knows how hot it gets here starting right around this time of year, I don't know how much later I'm willing to go.
Let's edit that part out.
All right. Okay.
Keep that out of this podcast.
Coach, thank you so much for your time. We've kept you for almost an hour, and you've got a baseball game later today. So we appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you so much, and best of luck the rest of the way.
No, you guys are the best. Appreciate you.